learn the basics of a minor scale, you still need to learn the major scale first. So the sound of a major scale in any key should sound like a happy scale. Let's take the key of C. That's the major scale. That will sound the same in any key. So if that's in the key of C, if I change the key to, let's say, a G, it will sound like this. If I change it in the key of D, or in the key of E, the pattern sounds the same, but it starts on a different key. That's why we have keys. That's what keys are for. It gives you where to start. It's like your home base. Now, why we use key of C? Because it's very simple. It's all the white keys from C to the next C. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. That's why it's simpler to explain and easier to understand. We don't mind the black keys, okay? With that in mind, in any major key, there is what we call a relative minor scale or chord. Now, a C chord sounds like this, C, E, G. And now the relative minor of C is a 6th letter above C. Okay, so if we count it C, D, E, F, G, that's 5 letters. A is the 6th note from C, so A is the relative minor. It's A minor. So how do we build A minor? Same root position, 5-3-1 or 1-3-5 fingers. You start on A, skip to C, skip to E, and now you have a minor chord, A minor. That's what you think about when you're going up the scale. But another way to think about to find the relative minor in any key is 3 half steps down. If you don't know your intervals, I suggest looking at this video to know what are intervals, the half steps and the whole steps, just to keep up with this lesson, okay? Now, if you know your intervals, if you're in the key of C, a half step down is B, another half step down is B flat, and the third half step down is A. So that's another way to look for the relative minor of any key. Now that you know your relative minor note in the key of C, we're going to build a scale from that chord or from that note. It's quite simple actually, because in the key of C major, they're all white keys, and the relative minor of C major is A minor. That's why we call it the relative minor, because they share the same key signature, or they share the same notes. All right. So in the C major, we play C to C, like that. It sounds happy. Now for your relative minor A minor scale, you just start on A and end on the next A. And it drastically changes the scale, right? From major, white keys only, to minor, also white keys only. So they share the same notes, they share the same ingredients, but it starts on a different note. C is to C, that's major. A minor is to A. So that is how you build a minor scale or a relative minor in the context of a key in the key of C, okay? Now to translate this onto the guitar, we need to know the pattern of a C major scale. Now this is the pattern that you can use, 3rd fret of the 5th string, that's where you start, that's C. And then look at the fretboard, 5 on the 5th string, and then next string, 2nd fret, 4th string, 3rd fret, 5th fret, next string, 3rd string, 2nd fret, 4th fret, and then 5th fret. So we have... So if you just take a look at the pattern and notice what the pattern is and realize where it is, where the notes are, now we can start building the A minor scale. So the relative minor A minor scale in the key of C. So the 5th string A, and look at those notes, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. So if you have your major scale, let's analyze it. We're just gonna add an open A string and a B note on the 2nd fret of the A string, and that's your A, B. And then follow the scale of the major scale until you reach this note here, A. That's your A minor scale. Try it ascending and descending. So after spending much time with that scale, the major and minor scale, you'll realize that these notes are just being reused each time, okay? So now it's time to build a minor chord, the A minor chord. What did we learn last time in our previous lessons is building chords in the root position where we wrote down the staff. Check out that video. And now with that in mind, we're going to build a chord first. 3 notes only. Let's look at the fretboard. Let's look for an A. I see an A here on the 2nd fret of the 3rd string. I see a C on the 1st fret of the 2nd string. And an open E on the 1st string. So with fretting these notes, these A, C, and without fretting the open string E, play them together from the 3rd to the 1st string. That's your triad. That's your A minor triad. Okay, but you'll notice that we're missing some notes here, some strings, because the guitar repeats those notes. Okay, it's a repeating notes. So let's look for another A. Bottom, we have an A string. And on the next string, let's look for a note that's included in the A minor scale or A minor chord, A, C, E. The next is an E, right there. That's why the shape of A minor is like this, because we play an A, an E, another A C, and an E. So notice, there, that's your A minor chord. You'll find it in many guitar chord charts. That is what we call your first position, or the open A minor chord. But make sure that you strum it from the A string, not the E string. Although you can include that, but it will take away the sound of A because the bottom note is A, should be. Okay. Now, that's the first position. That's your open chord. Let's look for other A positions. The second position so far for A minor is a bar chord. Okay, but we're not going to play a bar chord now. We're just going to play triads. So the next A position is here on the 7th fret of the 4th string. And then I see a C on the 3rd string and another E on the 2nd string down here on the 5th fret. Now, if I bar them or fret them, it will sound like this. It sounds thicker, but the notes are the same down here on the first position. And it's the same here. So it's up to you how to play an A minor now. You realize that there are different positions for the same set of notes. Okay? So this is part of a bar chord. If you play a bar chord of A minor, the whole bar chord, it involves all the strings. That's your whole bar chord. But now you realize, wait, I can play a chord with only 3 notes on the guitar. That's usually what guitarists do with bands. When you play an A minor, it's just 3 notes sometimes 4 notes. See what I mean? You don't need to play the bass sometimes if you're playing with a band. But if you're playing by yourself, you can add that A down here and play the triad in this position. Or in this position. Now it really depends on the context of the song and how you want to control the chord. If you want full control, what I mean by control is stopping the sound and when to play the sound, you use bar chords or some kind of a semi-bar chord like this, what I showed you. You can stop, you can mute the strings immediately. Compared to the open string, you need your right hand to mute it, but on the bar chord, you can mute the strings only with your fretting hand. There you go. And so that concludes our episode for today. I hope you understood what we talked about today, and you can use that now in the key of C for now. And later on, as you get better understanding the theory behind it, you can change keys now and apply the same patterns on different keys. Try it on G. Try it on F. Those minor chords, okay? So I hope this helps you out. I'll see you on our next lesson. Good luck.